Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Wrestling. It's Tuesday, so it's time for our wrestling question of the week. So, Tim, what is our wrestling question this week?
Hi, Lee. Wrestling question of the week is: what were your top three highlights of the early Saturday night main events?
Good question. So, I'm going to struggle a little bit with this because I was born in '85, and I know Saturday night main event was quite a big show throughout the '80s. But when you asked me this earlier in the week, there is a couple of things that came to mind. So, we're going to just do a top three because we could have picked loads.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I could have gone on for a list forever. And unfortunately, I was born in 1981, so I watched quite a lot more of it than you did. But what we'll do is we'll do it in a descending order, so third, second, and first.
Okay, brilliant. Do you want me to start with my number three then?
Yeah, let's go with you first.
All right, so my number three is from 1987, and it's the Mega Powers actually uniting. So obviously, like I said, I was 2 at the time, so I don't actually remember this happening in real time. But I did see a lot of documentaries after about the Mega Powers, and I loved Hulk Hogan and I loved Macho Man. So I think this was a very significant event during the wrestling period. And obviously, at this time, we had the good guys and the bad guys characters. And that's the sort of what I grew up on, the superheroes of wrestling, and these two were my superheroes.
Yeah, that's a great moment. They came together when Hulk was helping out Macho Man from an attack. It is a really good, important moment, especially in wrestling history. It sets up so much for the long term. For me, my number three was a match between the Rockers and the Hart Foundation in April of 1990. Both were faces of the company. Both were massive tag teams when I was growing up, with different unique styles. Especially when we look at tag teams such as Fraxium nowadays, they remind me very much of an early-paced Rockers team. And obviously, Bret Hart is one of the greatest of all times. And Jim Neidhart was such a great foil for him. It was a solid match, and I'm quite happy to rewatch it.
Yeah, I loved both teams. I collected a lot of wrestling figures as a kid, and Bret Hart was my main one I used to use on the blue plastic ring.
Your number two, then, Lee?
Yeah, so funny that you're mentioning the Hart Foundation. I actually went for Bret Hart defending his title against Papa Shango in 1992. It was on the last Saturday night main event show as we knew it, but it was Bret Hart's first televised title defence. So it led over into the new sort of era of wrestling. So again, a very historical moment. And Papa Shango used to scare the crap out of me when I was a 7-year-old kid. I know as a teenager, he became my best mate because he used to bring the eye candy out when he was the Godfather. But as a 7-year-old, seeing a masked voodoo man used to scare the hell out of me, and Bret Hart was a hero of mine. So I think it was a real key event again.
Two very good, reliable guys in the ring. Bret Hart can make anyone look amazing. Charles Wright, aka Papa Shango, was solid in the ring when he needed to be.
Exactly. Do you think he was a better wrestler as the Godfather or as Papa Shango?
I think each. See, I remember Karma. That was in the new age, the new generation, where he was Karma, the ultimate fighting machine. He served his roles well within each of the eras he was in. I think each one served its place.
Okay, and who's your number two?
So my number two, and this was a really hard pick, was Andre versus Hulk for the world title, where Andre actually pinned Hulk Hogan. And I remember it. He pinned him for the belt and immediately gave the belt to the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, in exchange for a bag full of cash.
Yes, again, I'm probably a bit too young to remember that in real time, but I've seen clips of that. And yeah, again, good storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. The match was an overlay from WrestleMania 3, so it was almost like a rematch. They did it so well. And whilst I can't remember whether Andre has actually cleared to say that he actually held the belt, but it is definitely one of those moments that helps shape the rest of wrestling history.
Yeah. Before we go on to our number one, we've got some honourable mentions. I've only got one really. It's not really an event, but it's a person I saw a lot on Saturday Night Main Events, and that's Jake the Snake Roberts. And that guy, as a kid, I loved, but knowing as an adult what goes into making a character and stuff, I appreciate his ring work and his promos a lot more now than obviously I did as a kid. And I know he had a lot of different things on Saturday Night Main Event. So my honourable mention just goes to Jake the Snake, the character.
Yeah, I love Jake the Snake. Whilst I'm absolutely petrified of snakes, his character work was fantastic. As a kid, I remember when he would bring the giant big python into the ring, I would almost cringe behind it. But he told the right stories, and as a result, he was always a very popular character. My honourable mentions are, I have to get my notepad out for this one. We've got the British Bulldog versus Shawn Michaels, where HBK won his first intercontinental title in 1992. The Bulldog had just beaten Bret Hart for the belt at Wembley. He then went on to drop it very quickly to the Heartbreak Kid. So that was a really good match as well. The Bulldogs versus the Hart Foundation in a 2 out of 3 falls match. And a big one that people sometimes forget is Hulk Hogan versus the Boss Man in a cage match where he almost power slammed the big Boss Man off the top of the cage.
I was going to say, I remember seeing that again, and especially for that era, being on top of the cage, and especially for Hulk Hogan, who weren't really an aerial guy, it was quite a big moment.
Yeah, these are all highlight moments. Matches between, another good one was the Intercontinental Champion, the Honky Tonk Man, versus Macho Man, where Macho won the match via a count out. And I remember the story of this because the Honky Tonk Man refused to get pinned in that match.
Right.
And as a result, what happened afterwards is he then lost the belt to the Ultimate Warrior in about 30 seconds. I remember that.
So he's punished because he refused to take the pin to Savage.
Yeah, exactly. What happened was Savage then went on to win the world title as a result of it. So Savage didn't lose out, but it was certainly a turning moment for the Honky Tonk Man.
Exactly. So now we're on to our number one. So mine is, again, you mentioned Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty earlier, but it was the breakup of the Rockers when he super kicked him through that Barber Shop window. And that's a moment that's been replayed again and again over the many years. But I remember being a 7-year-old watching that, feeling like my world has ended because my favourite tag team had just turned on each other. And how on earth could Shawn Michaels do that to Marty? I weren't as bad as the people crying or the person, but I was nearly close to that because it did devastate me, thinking, what the hell? What's going to happen now?
How could they do that? How could he do it? Yeah, exactly it. Absolutely, exactly it. And it is, people seem to forget that it was such a strong super kick Marty Jannetty took for that. It does look devastating now, even now.
Yeah, and obviously it then birthed Shawn Michaels as a single character who went on for DX, Mr. WrestleMania, and now he's the head honcho at NXT. All based off of that super kick through that barbershop window. So
a little fun fact about Shawn Michaels' Heartbreak Kid music. Whilst the new version has him singing it, the original version has Sensational Sherry singing the lyrics to the Heartbreak Kid.
Oh, I only thought she did the intro. I never knew she did the whole song in the old days.
The comments have been wrong. Please do. I like to be proved wrong.
So, Tim, what's your number one?
So, as a kid, I grew up absolutely adoring Hulk Hogan for some reason. That's very much changed now as an adult. But I distinctly remember the Mega Powers. And I remember in February of 1989, as a 7-year-old, watching tag team match between with Hogan and Savage versus the Twin Towers, which was Big Boss Man and the African Dream Akeem. One of the worst gimmicks ever, if I'm honest. But in the match, Miss Elizabeth gets injured and Hulk carries her out to the medical bay, at which point Savage has to wrestle the match on his own. He comes back from the match and essentially ends the Mega Powers. They explode. We set up for WrestleMania 5, which is will always live as one of my favourite WrestleManias of all time. I love that. I love the match. I love the angle. It's brilliant.
And again, going back to what you're saying about backstage heat and stuff, apparently Savage was like that, and he had certain rules for Elizabeth during the actual segment to how much Hogan could touch her or where and how she should respond. And so again, it's sort of like art imitating life. But again, another devastating moment for me. Obviously, a couple of years later, it actually happened because of my age and stuff. But I think I watched the documentary about the Mega Power, so it showed them from the start to the end. And it was a devastating moment that they split up, because that was like my superheroes being pulled apart over a woman. But it seems like that's the story of life. So
yeah, no, absolutely. It's absolutely two best friends can always argue after a woman, without a doubt.
But that was our top 3 moments for Saturday Night Main Event. And as we said earlier, it just proves how underrated Saturday Night Main Event was. And let's hope we have a decent one this Saturday. And Tim, I look forward to reviewing that with you after the event.
Absolutely. What I will say is, if you disagree with us, please leave your comments in this section here. We love to read what people are saying about us. We like to be proven wrong from time to time. Right. But with that notice, Lee, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next week.